for all the youngsters who are listening to this, never get scared of experimenting. Never get scared of moving beyond the boundaries. Because only when you move beyond the boundaries, magic happens.
This is episode number 4 of the Archgyan podcast with Chetan Shivaprasad. Hey guys, welcome to the Archgyan podcast, the podcast all about architecture and architects in India. My name is Manish and I'm the host of this show. On today's episode, we talk to Chetan Shivaprasad, who's a Bangalore-based architect and who has been practicing for the past 25 years. He heads a firm called Kham Design studio, where they not only just practice architecture, but they explore various dimensions of design. He's also a big pioneer in teaching architecture, where he has been teaching for the past 20 years all across India in various institutes and has inspired a lot of young architecture students. The topics we talk about today is architectural education in India, design workshops as a tool for teaching, and a lot more. So guys, if you like this episode, please do give us a rating and review on whichever podcast platform you're listening from, be it iTunes, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify. And also if you want the info of what Chetan sir spoke about today, check out our website at archgyan.com, and the show notes is available at archgyan.com/04. Now, without further ado, let's get right to it. Before we get to the architecture part, tell us about your background. How did you get into architecture? Was it something you always wanted to do as a kid?
Okay. No, architecture for me was something which was introduced to me during college.
Oh yeah, okay.
During architecture college. So I didn't get into architecture because I wanted to get into architecture. It was a blessing in disguise. I happened to sleep in my second semester chemistry examination, which didn't give me enough marks to get into medicine or any of the other engineering courses. That apart, I think it's been a brilliant experience post joining architecture. But I think my upbringing, where we talked about theatre, I was an Yakshagana dancer. So these are things which kind of imbibed certain pattern making within myself. And that somewhere luckily matched with the profession which I chose or which I got into. So architecture somewhere has been an extension of my earlier self.
Okay.
Even though it was not conscious. So that's a brief journey of what happened on why I joined architecture. So it so happened that I did actually 6 months of CBZ, BSc in CBZ.
Okay.
And then another 3 months of civil engineering, and then got into architecture.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So that's been the journey of architecture. And then it's been 5 years of brilliant.
So how was it studying architecture back in the days? Give us a small brief about how architecture education was back in the day.
Luckily, I was the batch where I was the last batch with an annual scheme. So we didn't have exams every fourth semester.
This was Dayanand Sagar.
This was in Dayanand Sagar College, in Bangalore University. We were the last batch of architects who went through the annual scheme. So it was more about being exposed for the whole year. And then you're not in a rush.
Right.
You're not in a rush to just get into examination mode every 2 months or 3 months. So there was no dash to do something. But with us, since we were always involved with learning new things or exploring with architects, I happened to travel a lot right from my day one.
Oh, wow.
So NASA suddenly became a very important thing for me, National Association of Students of Architecture.
So you're always part of the NASA
I was an active participant of NASA.
Oh, brilliant.
In fact, I was on the advisory board for almost 5 to 6 years after my course.
Oh, wow, okay.
I realized that NASA was putting in a lot of documentations. So I started the NASA Information and Documentation Center way back in, I think, 94 or so.
Wow, okay.
So, and I used to travel a lot. So, architectural education for me was actually NASA, was actually meeting people, was actually traveling, was actually looking at things outside the classroom scenario.
Right.
And then it was, since it was an annual scheme, you get to interact with seniors, juniors, work on their projects.
Wow.
So I managed to work with close to around 10 architectural theses before I did my thesis.
Oh my God. So your thesis must have been a killer.
And when I did my thesis, we had close to around 35 juniors from all over Bangalore who were working on us. We had taken up a Chowdhury Hall for my thesis.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was like one activity space for almost 3 months, where everybody used to come day and night. We used to do a lot of things for my thesis.
So what is the topic?
The topic was very kind of huge. It was to define what is a cube.
Oh, wow.
So it was like fun because we were dialoguing on the symbolism of cube, right from geometry to philosophy.
That was pretty advanced for that time, right?
It was fun. It was actually interesting. And then because at the end you had to design a build form for a bachelor's degree program, which is fair.
Right.
We ended up designing a luxury home in the suburbs of Bangalore. Now it's in the center of Bangalore.
Okay.
But we did that. We looked at additive cubes, subtractive cubes. We played around with form. Material was suddenly introduced to me. So we started looking at what material works, how with what kind of a cube. So it was fun. It was learning through peers. It was sharing with peers. It was sharing with your juniors, seniors. It was fun.
So post architecture, you started working with Jason sir, is it?
During architecture.
During
architecture, when it happened that I was working on one of my friends from BMS, his thesis.
Okay.
It was all hand drawings at that point of time. So he was designing revamping of the Mumbai Central railway station.
Okay.
And then I had taken up the job of drawing the orthographic projection of a dissected.
Oh my God! And
so
even the building
is very huge. It was like almost 5 days of continuous drawing on the drawing board. So it was fun. And when I was working there, just opposite there was this lovely building.
Okay.
Beautiful building. Very, very grounded. So just walked inside, fell in love with that space, just found out who's the architect, went to his office the next day and said, I just visited this house and I would like to work with you. Somewhere Jaisim was some person who always took a lot of time to select, especially boys, because he felt that they were not doing the right thing when people join them for internship. They're not committed enough. But suddenly, I don't know why, but he said, come over from tomorrow.
Okay, awesome.
So it happened, and should I share the experience?
Yeah, sure, go ahead. I'm sure all our listeners are eagerly waiting to listen to this.
So when I went in the next day, I think he asked me a simple question. He said, what are you good at?
Okay.
I said, I'm good at perspectives, orthographic projections, and I love models. I love to work with models. So then he said, let's do a model. So he asked me, what all do you want for doing a model? And he said, I need the drawings and I need the materials for constructing the model. So he just took out a sheet of, a postal cover, and just drew around 10 lines on that. And said, this is your drawing. This is your plan, and this is the section of how I want this place to be. And it's for you to design this place. And the area was 100,000 square feet. And that's where it started off. And for the next 6 months of my internship, we had a 6-month internship. For the next 6 months of my internship, I just worked on that model from clay to mount board, then to glass. We were talking about structural glazing way back in 93, 94. Where we were talking about floating slabs. We were talking about bridging blocks somewhere around 45 feet above.
This was a very conceptual...
highly conceptual, but it started off, the whole design happened on the model.
Right.
I remember him telling then to the client, saying that if I walk out of the project, or if if there's a challenge in me working on this project, Chetan is the person you need to go to.
Awesome.
It was so much of fun because at the end of the day, when I went back to the jury, I had 4 photographs.
Okay.
I had absolutely no drawings to take with me.
Okay.
Could be some line sketches.
Right.
But when I went back and I explained my whole experience of working with him, I think the juror was like, I think you've learned the best out of the whole crowd. Because
Wow, brilliant.
the kind of experience you do in terms of understanding how that space works, leaving that space.
Right.
So you're talking about how a person walks inside, what happens at different levels, how do you read massing. You're talking actual architectural philosophy at a 4th year level, which was quite intense for me at that point of time. Being especially from the first batch of the college.
Absolutely.
So you don't have seniors from your own college, you're looking at other college students. But Jaisim has been a mentor from then on. Continued working with him post my internship in the firm for some time. And then when I started my own practice in 98, continued to be working with him as an associate, even till date. We're doing, he hands me some projects and says, let's work together on this.
So let me backtrack. So Jaisim sir was only one of your bosses, or you had like...
No, I think Jaisim has been my only boss as an architectural practice, yes.
Okay.
But in terms of architectural mentoring, I would definitely say Kanade brothers, Shankar, Navnath, both of them.
All these were your faculty?
They weren't my faculties. They were architects practicing. So I used to go stay in the buildings they were building.
Oh wow! Okay.
Literally sleep over in the under construction buildings. So, the Keremane was being built at that point of time, which was a brilliant piece of architecture.
Great, sir.
So you kind of lived in that space when it was being built, understood systems of construction. Then you were interacting with architects like late Padalkar. You're having interactions with architects like Sanjay Mohe. They were all kind of very involved. They were at their peak at that point of time, especially exploring new thoughts. They were sharing it with fellow architects. There was a consortium of group of architects sitting down every other day. They would get themselves a mug of beer and give me a glass of badam milk or something to drink. So that's how I think they've all been mentors to me. They've all been amazing mentors.
So when did you decide to start Kham Design? Like, was it something you wanted to do, like you start on your own?
Yes, I think Kham for me has been a very, very important sound or a word or a philosophy, because I think a lot of things for me is evolving from that sound.
Right.
Actually, I came across that word when I was doing my thesis, when I was studying a presentation of an exhibition done by SPA Delhi.
Okay.
They had done an exhibition called Kham. And when I went through that whole document, I think...
this was in Bangalore, the exhibition?
No, this was... I haven't seen that exhibition.
Okay.
I saw the document of that exhibition.
Right.
I think the exhibition was done... might be around late 80s or early 90s, I don't remember. But Kham is a Sanskrit seed word or a bijakshar, which means concepts of space. And especially when I was working with Jaisim, I was working on a very an idea-centric thought process, an idea-centric, a material-centric thought process. And I was staying in a house with my mentors from college, PU college, Sridhar and other people, your Anantmurthy and all, who are more leftist in thinking.
Okay.
So you're talking about people-centric. So at that point of time, somewhere I could relate that to bring in a language which is very Indian. I need to understand what is a space which India can relate to. And somewhere I could see that happening in Jaisim's work. And that strength of pushing a material beyond its comfort zone. What we do as regular Indians as jumlas. Jugads.
Yeah.
To push the material to that jugad level and to see that work and to see that function in a much beautiful level. Bring in aesthetics to that. Somewhere it tied me up there. So I think somewhere I wanted a word to be rooted in Indian philosophy. So I took this word called Kham. It's a Bijakshar, which somewhere symbolically is as powerful a sound as Om. It means concepts of space. For example, Sukham and Dukkham are emotions, a space of emotions. And it also means in many ways, it means a space which is left behind a speeding bullet or a speeding arrow. So you kind of get into that space which can't be defined.
Right.
And somewhere, if I can create an architecture or a space which can be experienced and which need not be defined by certain logistics, I've done justice to. That's where I think Kham became a very important word for me. And that's when I decided to start my practice, I had a talk with Jaisim and he said, you should.
So this was after 5 years.
This was no.
Working with
after,
Jason.
No. I think I worked with him for a year and a half.
Okay.
After my college days, and then started my practice somewhere in '98.
Oh, great.
November '98. We're now 20 years. This November. That's when we started off, and it was a tough journey when we started off. You're trying to break rules, and when you start off, I didn't want to go the path which was comfortable, so we questioned every notion which was put across to us. The first experimental vault I did, which was a very small vault, didn't succeed, and then we went on to build that vault at a larger scale.
This was a wall, is it?
Vault.
Vault.
A brick vault.
Okay.
We went on to build a much larger vault.
Oh wow! Okay.
To the same project. So you question a lot of things. You understand systems, and you start working with materials. So that happened. I think '98. I started my practice. I think I built my first house in somewhere around '99.
Oh, great.
99 or early 2000.
But how did you manage the funding and all that so fast, right? In 1 year?
Somehow, I mean, I was a privileged guy to be staying in a ancestral house.
Okay.
So I didn't have to worry about food, kapda or makan for some time. And we didn't have, except other than my travel, my love for travel, I don't think I had too much expenditure. I didn't have a girlfriend.
Okay.
So then 2000 onwards has been a nice journey where we.
So when you started, it was only you, or did you have other people as
we
well?
had 2 more guys who joined me, but I think they stayed around for a year. Okay. No, they were there for 2 years until we started off the first project. And we did a few small interior.
All these were residential and interiors.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think they left. We mutually separated. They're amazing friends today.
Okay.
Amazing friends. But only one of them is an architect. The other one has moved away from architecture.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Then it was me alone.
And what kind of work is it? Is it mostly residential and...
what we are doing right now?
Yeah. Or you can start from back then as well. Did you have a certain notion in mind that you wanted to do this kind of architecture, which was more sustainability and, rooted to the ground compared to commercial spaces and big buildings?
Look, to be truly sustainable, you can't build.
Okay.
So I think sustainability as a word is a farce word.
Okay.
To be conscious of what you're doing is more important.
Right.
If you're conscious that you're harming something by doing something, that's the first step. And that has always been the approach towards design for us. I don't think our practice is sustainable architecture, green architecture or blue architecture or whatever. But I think it's conscious to what we are doing. We try and see that can we minimize concrete?
Great.
Can we bring in good quality light? Can we bring in theater of light into the space? Can we understand structural systems much better? These kind of queries has been constant in our projects, and it's escalating in each project in which we do. So we try and push a material beyond. Say, for example, one material we've been able to manage to do a foundation, to a roof, to a door, to a window, to a wall.
Okay.
And
which material is this?
Pardon?
Which material?
No, clay as a material. If I'm really looking at clay as a material, we've pushed it to all the levels. we've used cycle rims as window grills.
Wow.
We've used beer bottle, we've used
Okay.
pots, and you bring in beauty into it. So today I don't think we're not stuck to any material today,
Okay.
but we're conscious. I think our next future would also be dealing with looking at why do we generate so much of waste, and can we look at waste being resource,
Okay.
and that will become the next the language which we want to do, which we want to practice. We've been doing that for quite some time now already. But yeah, that's one paradigm we are looking at.
And where do you see Kham Design going the future? What are your goals for Kham Design as a studio and practice?
No, I think even when I wrote down the note of what Kham Design means to me, when we started off, I started off with a small note of what Kham should mean to me. And then we said Kham should stand at creating various nuances of space making. So I don't look at it only in terms of making buildings.
Okay.
We've done installations. We are trying to work with music. We are trying to work with theatre.
Fascinating.
We are trying to look at filmmaking. So I think all of these are different expressions of space making. So all this, and education. Education is
Absolutely.
an important aspect of what we are exploring now. So Kham, I think, will evolve. It's on a constant evolution path of trying to explore a certain known language, break that language, and rearrange that language to something else beautiful. And that process continues. I don't see it as reaching a particular level and then going straight.
Right.
I just looking at it as a series of loops going up.
Great. So you've been a big time, pioneer in architectural education. You taught me personally when I was studying School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada.
Right.
So how did you get into teaching architecture? I'm sure it's a big passion of yours, but when did you start and why did you decide to start teaching a lot of students in India?
Okay. It so happened I was in my third year architecture.
Okay.
And I was quite active. I was trying to explore various ways of drawing perspectives and axonometrics. And I talked to my professor at that point of time and said, can I take the first year class? So that's where I started off. And I think I've been constantly teaching, or rather exploring with the students from that time. Been
Nice.
working with them. So from my third year of college, I've been teaching, if that answers your question.
That's brilliant.
So now almost 25 years of teaching experience and 20 years of practice.
Okay, great, sir. You've started this initiative called Hampi Center of Design, right? Can you elaborate more about what this is about?
Okay, it so happened that in 2000, if I'm right, or rather, 2000, 2001,
Okay.
we did our first project in Hospet, which was around 10 kilometers from Hampi. And I've been constantly doing few projects in that belt, looking at
Okay.
climate responsive architecture. Hampi always fascinated me. Not because of the ruins, but because of the stories the ruins said, and because of the way the compositions of the rocks behaved and the light patterns on them. If you've seen some of our pictures which I post on Facebook where I conduct my workshops there, they're all in the ruins. They're all among the rocks. They're all interacting. The kids interact with the rocks.
Okay.
So I personally feel that education somewhere has to move beyond a drawing tool, because I think today we are depending too much on a tool and defining that as architectural
Right,
education. Can we go beyond, and can we start looking at people and relationships with other people or with natural elements? And can we address that? So, which was a paradigm shift in the way I was looking at architectural pedagogy. Somewhere we've been successful in certain of our studios where we started looking at, because of the constraints of the school and the thinking process, the pedagogy is restrictive to a classroom learning. So we said, can I create a hub for design dialogue?
Right.
The Design Dialogue Hub, we are working on setting up at Hampi, which will house a school of design, a school of architecture, a residency program for artists to come and stay there.
Oh, brilliant.
And say, I'm just looking at, we create a residency for around 10 artists to come and stay there, assuming. And we're getting Hampi being on the bucket list of every artist.
Yeah. And traveler as well.
Travelers. So I'm sure I'll get 10 artists or architects from across the world to come and stay there at any given point of time. So in a year approximately I get 100 people who can guide, who can give different perspectives to the students of architecture at that point of time, in that campus. We realize that design is taken out from common man because craft is being killed. Practices are slowly dying thanks to literacy movement. Literacy movement had a good thought process, but it backfired on the killing of craft, killing of certain practices. So we said theatre is one such major thing. So we want to revive by having Hundime Abba or a full moon night festival where you have theatre, you have musical performance, you have street plays. You call the whole nearby villages to participate. So you're not talking about just a school of architecture and educating only a set of students who come and pay fees and learn there, but you're talking about bringing in a design awareness among public, among artists, among architects, we're now doing a lot of inspired design workshops where we're looking at different thought processes of design. So we've had workshops on lightweight structures. We've had workshops on how do I fold paper and look at new form finding. We've done workshops on tensegrity. We've had workshop on how do I look at nature, get inspired through nature and address things. We're working on a workshop on how do I look at films, appreciate film, and then take it on to design. So we're looking at various things which can inspire a designer.
Okay.
And then we're doing workshops on that.
So this is in relation with the universities as well, or is it just
at the moment we've kept it open for everybody.
Okay.
We're looking at these activities open to everybody.
Okay.
We explored traveling. We said, can we organize tours for architects and students of architecture together to see works of Bava or see works of Ando. We took a few group of people there, highly focused, because when you're going with a professional team of students and architects together to see Ando's work, and you come back in the evening and sit down and discuss different perspectives of looking at the same thing. Absolutely. So architectural travel becomes much more intense. So we explored that. That's also a way of learning. So all these are verticals, or I would say nodes, which we are looking at in Hampi Center of Design, which will activate design thinking processes, which could bring in a change in the way we address design in the future. We might be talking about futuristic materials down the line. We might be talking about building in the Mars down the line.
Okay.
Because we've kind of, sorry to use the word, but we have kind of fucked up Earth. Right? Somewhere, if I'm looking at the United Nations report on the footprint, we have overshot our footprints by almost 1.7 times. Today we are consuming resources as if we have 1.7 Earths.
So you as an architect is very worried about what's going to come in the future, right? If we go in
definitely, right? Aren't we? I mean, aren't we responsible for it?
Absolutely.
That's where I say, even though I wouldn't say I'll be able to build a building which can destroy itself and become food for another process right now. But I'm conscious that in the future, I'll have to design a building which can destroy itself after its use and become food for another process.
That's a great
it needs
concept,
to be. It needs to be, no? Otherwise, you're just creating more waste. Earlier, our forefathers were talking about 200-year-old buildings or 300-year-old buildings. Today, I can't think of a place where people would want to live in the same space 30 years down the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
So lifespan of a built form is coming down. But what is the kind of materials you're using to build it? What is the kind of consumption? I mean, for one of our projects, they dug a bore last week. They had to go down 1,300 feet for an inch of water.
And they got water.
They did, but 1,500 feet. Whereas if you're looking at your perennial water storage, the moment you had dug a well for 20 feet, you would have got perennial water.
Yes.
But that mindset is so stuck up. But at least I'm conscious. I'm conscious and I'm educating my clients to do something.
Yes. I think that is very important as architects, that we educate our clients. And
slowly, I don't know. As we move forward, as Kham move forwards or HCD moves forwards, I think somewhere I would love to design a building which can destroy itself after its lifespan. And it becomes food for another process. It can become another building material, or it can become an organic.
I think that will become definitely a thesis project, like someone who listens to this. Right?
Love to. We're doing a design chair where we'll be supporting theses which will take up projects based on those design chairs. We're working on the lightweight structures. We're working on nature-inspired design and paper workshop, paper activities. So if any student are doing research on that, we are looking at supporting them technically. We're looking at supporting them financially through HCD.
Okay.
So, when we're looking at nature-inspired design, definitely
I'm sure
a building which can kill itself after its lifespan is something. If somebody can work on it, excellent.
Yes. So let's, now you spoke about the Hampi Center of Design, which is absolutely a great idea. But let's talk architectural education in India. My personal opinion is that it's not in par with the rest of the world in terms of quality and the kind of education that is imparted to a lot of architecture students. So you as a big, you travel to a lot of states and you teach in a lot of institutes. What is your take on architectural education in India?
Now, there's been a lot of hue and cry of the number of colleges which have cropped up in the last few years.
Around 500 so far, I guess, plus, I'm not sure.
Yes, we have got 500 schools of architecture today. Is that needed? Yes. We need more. For the simple reason is that less than 0.5% or 1% of our projects in India are built by architects.
Oh my God.
So if you don't have the numbers, if you have just an act which says only an architect can build, you don't have the numbers to prove it. On my road, where I have an office here, architectural firm here, we've had close to 10 buildings which were built here, and none of them had an architect. Right? So I think the profession needs numbers. There would be a lull for some time because of the quality of education those kids will get. But I'm sure that everybody who studied architecture won't end up being a Le Corbusier or a Frank Lloyd Wright or an Ando or somebody. But yeah, there would be certain fires which are lit by them which can evolve good architecture. But as a profession, you need numbers. But yes, there is a big challenge in the way we are looking at architecture today. I'm not too happy with the way we've got back physics and chemistry as a requirement to get into architecture.
Yes.
Because I think arts, literature, philosophy, psychology is equally important for an architect.
Yes.
As important as we see physics or chemistry.
So that basically says that an engineer who's bored about studying engineering, he jumps into architecture just for the sake of it. Okay, I'm bored of doing physics, chemistry. I'll do a little. Whereas if you had literature students and philosophy students.
Yeah, you had that till last year, where for somebody taking up NATA, the aptitude test, you need not have physics or chemistry. You wanted to have only mathematics as a compulsory subject. So you had people from the commerce stream joining architecture. You had people from art stream joining architecture. You had people from science stream joining architecture. And different perspectives happen. I think that I personally feel is to be brought back so that you have a different thought process addressed to architecture. And the other important thing, which is the problem with education as a whole, is interlinking of disciplines.
Disciplines. Yeah.
If I can do a design studio along with psychology as a subject, I'm sure I'll become a better architect than some other subjects which is already being taught. You need a certain subject which needs to be a core of the profession, And you need to allow the students to look at various other aspects. Can we look at any architectural expressions today which are bold enough and saying that this is the political system of our country and this is where my building speaks about it? We're not bringing politics into our architecture. And architecture is an amazing expression of politics throughout the ages.
Yes.
We had Vidhan Sabha, which was being built in Bangalore, post-independence, built as a palace. And across we had Charles Correa's towers, which was more of a statement of democracy. And now they've made a mockery of Vidhan Sabha by building Vidhan Sabhas all over the state.
Yeah,
which is kind of, frankly, stupidity. Now, you need a political, statement from an architect to stop the politics of building Vidhan Sabhas across the country.
Yeah, I think there should be more architects as politicians as well, right?
But we are not teaching politics.
Yeah.
We're not teaching politics. We're not teaching psychology. We're not talking about anthropology. Architecture is one of the most anthropocentric professions because we build for men, for human beings. But we are not taught anthropology. Those are things which we need to build into the system. That's the need of the hour.
Tell us more about the power of design workshops. I feel because last episode we had Sushant Verma, where he spoke about how design workshop as a tool is transforming architectural education. So how do you feel workshops as a tool can help,
Yes, I think amazing work Sushant has been doing with Rat Labs. Workshops are very critical for a growth of a kid. But I think that's where you find people asking us to do more workshops because they would want to have a different approach towards looking at design. Both hands-on, because the school actually does very little with hands-on or things like that. The system, I'm not blaming any particular school, but the system does not give them too much of that opening. So workshops allow that opening to happen for the kids. Say for example, if I'm looking at poetry reading and architecture together as a activity for a workshop, that takes them on a different tangent, and that can come out with a beautiful design solution. So I think workshops, activities, dialogues, film shows, film appreciation activities, they're all things which are required. A student has to be exposed to a lot of zones of learning and not enclosed to only a classroom.
But how do we bring that change? Like a lot of institutes, they're just behind money, right? Architecture is big time market now, architectural education. So what steps can we take to...
I know, I think I would rather say that there's 3 levels of doing it.
Okay.
One is at the political or the decision-making level on how do you bring in a transformation in education at the political level, at a policy level. The second level is with institutions and universities of how can I open up, because a university is a group of institutions offering various learning curves. So how do I integrate and use that university as a learning curve for various disciplines? Then you're opening up an architecture student to do a vertical on criminal investigation.
Yes. They
could do a course on psychology. They could do a course on sociology. They could do a course on products, on mechanics. So you're opening up different tangents.
Yes.
That's the second level. Third level is set up many more Hampi Center of Design.
Okay. Great. Awesome. And what's your take on technology in architecture? Now there's AI and machine learning. So in the future, do you feel like you'll be working with a robot sitting next to you designing stuff? Or
I hope, very frank. I really hope. I think technology always is an amazing tangent.
Okay.
The way we would look at design in the coming days might be very different. Might not be anthropocentric in many places. Might be more logic-centric or pattern-centric, which an AI is much better equipped to do than a human brain. So the human brain can guide the AI to look at it in a particular way, and the AI can expand that thought process into so many levels or so many degrees of exploration. I think technology is definitely a welcome, and I think that would guide us in the coming years. That would take over. I wouldn't say take over, but there would definitely be a support system for design in the coming years.
Great. All right, so let's come to the business part of architecture in this episode. What advice would you give to young architects who are starting on their own and exploring a possibility of getting in more projects and standing on their own feet right after college? Because you as well, you worked with Jason sir for a year and a half, and then you started on your own, right?
Right.
So do you think that stays hold now as well?
I still feel so, because I think you would find that with most of the interns who come out and say, they do say that the learning which happens inside a studio is much, inside an office studio, is much higher than their learning in the course. I disagree on that, because I think they come back from the studio, from their college studios, with tools and design approaches, and they get guided by the practice to think in a particular way, to work in a particular way. I think one big ask for the youngsters is, I would definitely suggest them to work for a few years before starting off on their own, unless they're very sure about what their philosophy of design is. Otherwise, I would definitely ask them to work, to just be guided on how a system works. Unfortunately, we are not trained to be businessmen. We are not trained to be office managers. It has taken me 20 years to understand that I don't have to spend 15 hours a day or 16 hours a day to design the projects which I'm working on. And I don't have to ask my team to work for so many hours to see that a project happens. At the end of the day, I think it's about how do you create patterns, how do you create processes in place, how do you create processes which sometimes should be followed, sometimes should be consciously broken, and come out with a new process. So to build on those processes, it could be as simple a thing like how do I name a file on my computer? And if I'm spending 20 years of my time to try and not put final .dwg on my file, it's not called for. So either you do a program on office management or you join an office for some time.
And what do you feel about collaboration in architecture? Do you think that's a good prospect in the future, where architects and different firms collaborate with each other? Like Sushant in the last episode, he spoke about margins being an issue when you collaborate with different designers and architects on a single project. So what is your take on collaboration with different architects?
Until unless the thinking process matches, collaboration is difficult. But I would definitely say design is a very philosophy-bound process. So one's philosophy might not match with the collaborative process. But I feel the need for collaborations with other sectors. Say, for example, we're working with Ullas Anand, who is a naturalist, on how do I look at processes in nature, and how do I bring it back into architecture. We're working with that at different levels. We're even working together on trying to understand how can I make my whole process in HCD, the management people, the management process, the HR process, to be guided by the beehive, and not with a linear hierarchical
inspiration
system.
From
So I see the need that we need to collaborate with with professions of different levels, naturalist, a computer artist. We are having parametrics today as a tool for design. So somebody who can work with computer equations, a mathematician. You might collaborate with different people from different professions, and I think that can bring in some amazing design solutions.
Okay, great. So, all right. So coming to a close, what is the one thing that you feel I should have asked but didn't?
Okay, I don't know. I mean, I've just been responsive to whatever you've been asking. But I think one thing I would rather close it with this is, for all the youngsters who are listening to this, never get scared of experimenting. Never get scared of moving beyond the boundaries. Because only when you move beyond the boundaries, magic happens.
Okay.
If you're within the boundaries, then it's your day-to-day life. But always stress on going beyond. Going beyond does not mean that you need to look at economics or whatever. But even if I'm looking at a plastic cup and say, can I use it as a building material? And addressing how do I place it as a building material? Could be a way you can take your career forward. So this is the rule I live with. For me, it's about understanding what are my boundaries of thought, and then consciously stepping out of that boundaries, so that the boundary becomes larger.
Okay.
And every decision I make, the boundaries go a step larger.
Okay.
So I would definitely ask everybody to do that, and it's an amazing experience.
All right. Awesome, sir. So it was brilliant talking to you on this episode. We have listened to some really fascinating stories, learnt a lot. And we hope to have you in the future as well, where we can dwell into different other topics. I'm sure you have a lot more to talk about. So we can have this as a series as well.
Definitely. Any day. Thank you.
All right, sir. All right. Thanks.